having a conversation with an antidominance, whether INTJ or INTJ, doesn't really make a difference here. It can be frustrating to some people, like non-antidominance. And the frustration is all the more likely to be felt if expectations went into the actual interaction. Expectations that may have to do with the fact that maybe on the basis of some public forms of engagement with the antidominance, the other person seemed to think that they had lots in common with the antidominance. Maybe they were kind of within the same age range. That there's just a lot of potential for a connection, not necessarily a romantic connection at all, just a deep connection. And sometimes they may have a conversation with an antidominance and be frustrated, at times almost irritated by the elusiveness of the antidominance, because the elusiveness of the antidominance is a real thing. But the question is not so much, what to do with the elusiveness of the antidominance, but rather, why is the antidominance being elusive in this way that bothers me, right? Because undoubtedly, it often happens, we have to be honest here, it often happens that the antidominant is being elusive on purpose. There's a directionality to their elusiveness. They are trying to keep the other person at arm's length. It is true, they do that. Now, the fact there is intent and directionality to it, as paradoxical as it may sound, doesn't mean that the antidominance is particularly conscious of doing it. They might be only vaguely conscious that they're doing it, or they might be automatically doing it and just witness themselves doing it and deciding not to stop that process that initially arose in this kind of automatic fashion. Doesn't change the fact that the other person is often going to feel frustrated by it and sort of, just lacking understanding, not understanding what's stopping the antidominant from fully engaging. Why are they withholding? This is not just a type 5 kind of phenomenon. It happens with a lot of antidominants. And I want to touch on one of the reasons why that may happen. One of the reasons why it may happen has to do with the antidominance flow, and consequently their acute sense of discomfort with disruption, interruption, and jaggedness, right? So you can picture flow as something like this, right? That's the flow of speech and thought of the antidominance. It's oceanic, right? I mean, it can change in speed and pattern and rhythm, but it's always going to be wavy like this, right? Sometimes bigger waves, sometimes smaller waves, sometimes something closer to an oceanic calm, but it's still always going to be wavy, right? The issue is that antidominants are not comfortable, and they never thrive in conversational and ideational environments where the energy is more ruptured, the energy is more jagged, where there are breaks, sort of taking a break, start-stop situation, basically. Start-stop dynamics. And it so happens that the start-stop dynamic with the interruption and then refresh, that's actually a style that suits a lot of people. It really is a style that suits a lot of people. It's not a style that suits the antidominant. And so when another person has that style, I'm thinking in particular of a high PE user, so high SE users and high NE users, they both have that style, they tend to have that style. But if they are too unhindered in how they manifest that style, it might be difficult for the antidominant to actually kind of follow them and to basically lock into step, get in sync with their energy. And the antidominant is usually not that interested in trying too hard. Antidominants tend to be protective of their ocean, protective of the way in which their energy manifests, because for them, at a deeply existential level, there is this awareness that the more you're pulled away from this rhythm that follows its own course, the more likely you'll end up feeling anxious. And they will avoid anxiety, like most people, and maybe everyone intrinsically seeks to avoid anxiety, that is to say, avoid a painful state. So I'm not trying to give a recommendation to any dominance or SE dominance or, you know, ISTPs or INTPs or whatever. Because it's not as if you ought to not be authentic in order to get on with an INFJ or an INTJ. It's not as if you have to play like a role, because that would also be noticed by the antidominant and they would like it even less, right? So I don't really have any advice to give in this particular case, only just to have this awareness. That's what you consider like just normal interruptions, being spontaneous, going from one topic to the other, having this kind of start, stop, refresh function in your conversations, where jaggedness, the landscape of the conversation being jagged, is completely fine with you. And in fact, it may excite you, it may energize you. It would be the exact opposite for the anti-dominant. The anti-dominant is always concerned to keep the natural course of their flow. If you can lock into their flow, that's your best opportunity to engage with them at a deep level and feel not frustrated but enhanced by interacting with them. So let me know in the comments what you thought, guys. If you thought this advice was useful, give me a like, of course. Don't forget, I wrote 2 books on the INFJ, one of the 2 anti-dominants that we're familiar with. The Infinite Soul is my latest book, INFJ Life in the Modern World, which looks at all the ways INFJs can find purpose, value, and meaning in a world they often consider hostile. If you want to get the book, the first link below is to the book. Check the reviews. It's helped a lot of people. You know, there's another book that's helped a lot of people, and that's The Ecstatic Soul, a new look at the INFJ personality. That's the prequel to The Infinite Soul, first book that I published on the INFJ. And it's basically the deepest work, the deepest investigation into the nature of the INFJ mind. What's it like to be an INFJ? What's it like to think like an INFJ? So if you're interested in going deep, you should get this book. There's a link below as well. And finally, guys, don't forget that the lifeblood of my channel is my Patreon page. I could not do it without you. I could not do it without your kind donations. So please consider supporting me. The link to my Patreon is below. Don't forget that you get some access to some really cool perks. The 2 coolest, arguably, not the only ones, but the 2 coolest ones are access to our elite Discord server, where you can interact with me and others on a daily basis, and to, you know, a bonus video on a topic of your choosing every 2-3 weeks, where I go in depth, usually videos of 20 to 30 minutes. And the Patreon members are loving them. So if that is of any interest to you, please consider supporting me, because that also helps me a lot. Okay, guys, talk to you soon. Bye-bye.